someone who is emotionally unavailable is not necessarily a negative or a bad person. It's just a person who is using a lot of CPU power to deal with their own issues or their own, the things that they have going on within their life. So it's hard for them to now jump out of their own situation to, extend the support, the understanding to another person.
You'll be my forever friend. This love will never end. No, nothing can come between us. No, never. With you, my heart I can trust. Without expectations, labels, caught up in silly love fables. We'll see through the illusions of love to find the treasure in being forever friends.
Topic is emotional unavailability. The question that I posed was basically, what is it? How would you define it? And if there are some signs that you can give the people who are watching now currently, or maybe later on, that would be great, where they can identify that either their partner is emotionally unavailable, or maybe they can identify it within themselves if they're not certain if they are someone who's emotionally unavailable. Most people might not even know that they're emotionally unavailable. And I thought it was interesting, because when I read articles on this topic, a lot of it is just lack of emotional depth. It could be someone who they quote unquote would deem has a natural distrust for people, or for someone without reasonable cause. And I just, took myself and put myself in the position of different people that I've spoken to, especially people who have been hurt in relationships, who feel like now they have a natural distrust for when they're meeting someone, almost like they're expecting something to go wrong, And so when you look at it from those perspectives, it's not someone who is necessarily intentionally trying to ignore someone or cause harm to someone. It could be very well that the person doesn't even understand that they're not present, or that they're dealing with, a lack of vulnerability or lack of intimacy. Really, someone who's not emotionally available really is either fearful of intimacy or resist intimacy because of what they feel will come out of it, those shadows, right? We always talk about it here on the podcast, is that you have to allow vulnerability, is allowing God's light to be able to make those shadows that are within us, that are hidden, that we might not pay attention to, come to light, so that we can just stand in the true light of who we are. But many people don't allow that. That's not an easy process for many. So I don't think that they intentionally mean to hurt someone, but you end up doing it, of course, because if you don't have a genuine connection, especially emotionally, it's very hard for a relationship to last. I think the first thing you have to do is not take it personal, and then be able to, once you don't take it personal, then you can kind of like not make an attachment to that person or to the expectation of what you feel that person should do. And then you can have a clear mind of how you want to go forward, moving forward with the relationship. Because if that person really just doesn't have that much energy to extend, even if they want to and they have a desire to, if you know in your heart of hearts and in your intuition that, okay, this person just doesn't, they don't really have, the understanding or the empowerment to invest in the relationship in the way that I know that it needs to be invested in, then, of course, you have a choice of whether you're going to continue on with just a friendship and, talking to that person on a friendship level, or whether you're going to stay in it to see if it's going to eventually progress to something else. But without that first position of not taking it personal, it's going to be very hard to now navigate that relationship. Sometimes women, will say men are emotionally unavailable just because they don't communicate the way that, a majority of women do. but they are communicating. They're just not communicating in the way that the woman is understanding. So of course that's another thing. I think that's a totally different thing from someone actually being emotionally unavailable. You know, I think when your key point of what you said in your answer of that person just dealing with whatever past issues, whatever trauma, whatever it is that they have to deal with is taking up majority of their time. So it's hard for them to now extend that time to someone else, even if they are in the excitement of it, or they're enthused to do it, or even if they have a desire to do it. There's one thing desiring and wanting something, and then there's another, aspect of actually having the character to actually maintain a relationship, that's lasting. So I think when someone's in that, that's why I think this conversation is good, because one, we'd have to identify that. Is there a difference between just the communication styles, or is it really that person is emotionally unavailable? That's a different story. That's then us just having to understand the different way that we communicate. That's not someone being emotionally unavailable. And I find this topic so interesting because when I was younger, I used to think that I was that person. And even when I read certain articles that talk about how, I guess, signs or how people act who are emotionally unavailable, I have to look at it like, they like time by themselves. And I'm like, I like a lot of time by myself, but I used to think, or they can, I guess, leave certain situations very quickly, and I was, I think I still am that type of person. And I remember telling Ben that, when I was younger, I used to think that was me and that I was this selfish person. But I actually realized it wasn't, because the people that I had 2 serious relationships before, as serious as high school can get, right? But 2 serious relationships before Ben and I, started our friendship, and they both lasted 2 years. And, I realized that I had to grow out of those relationships, but I realized once I got to Ben that one key component or aspect of our relationship that was different from the ones that I was in is that I was emotionally available, but the people who I was with was just happy to have me there. So they didn't really, our conversations didn't always past the surface level, or maybe they weren't really interested in really looking into me and seeing who I was. They were kind of just okay with having me there because I was enjoyable to be around. And I noticed that was the main difference when I started to cultivate my friendship with Ben, is that from the beginning we were having some hard, heavy hitter discussions. And everyone who knows Ben, this is not even just towards me, he is just that type of individual, and I've always been that type of individual too. But when you meet someone who is not afraid to dive into deep waters like that, it was refreshing, and I understood that was the difference. So we could grow, deeper in on so many different levels. It's my main reason for creating Interask was to put the power where it belongs, which is within you. Because if not, then you're always going to feel like you're rolling the dice, and hopefully the next right one will come. And I don't want people to feel like they have to deal with relationships in that way, when there's actually core truths and fundamental principles that can allow you to be able to see clearly in a relationship and move confidently. So I would say, number one, you can't take it personal. That's number one. Do not take it personal that this person, don't deem this person as, oh, this is an awful person, this is a negative person who's doing something that is intentionally, specifically towards me. No, one, I think Royale said first is acceptance, right? So see what's right in front of you. Identify, as we were doing early on, if there are patterns and habits within that individual or within yourself where you're noticing, okay, this person's not able to be emotionally available to invest in our relationship in the way that it needs to be invested in. So once you do that, the acceptance part of it, embracing it and seeing for what it is, then don't take it personal. so that there's no attachment, because that's what will put the blinders on, where there's an attachment of what is your expectation to get from that person. Because one of the key signs to being in a healthy, thriving relationship is that the two people look for what the needs of the relationship is, and they put that before their own personal desires. So I always talk about, in relationships that, one of the ways where we can make sure that we're both kind of letting love have the strongest voice, or we're allowing God to guide the relationship, is that we're looking at the needs, because your relationships revolve around the needs, not the wants of the individuals. So two healthy, mature people walking in wisdom in relationship will look at the needs of the relationship, and their personal wants and desires will not trump them investing in the needs or developing and cultivating their relationship around those needs. So that's a way that you can kind of like decipher for sure if, okay, maybe it's just communication styles and we just need to learn how to communicate better with each other, or whether, okay, no, this is completely something that is a core component of our relationship, something that needs to be cultivated, something that needs to be built upon. And it's an immediate need, or a need that definitely in your foresight, that this is something that will need to be developed to be able to withstand, the many different challenges and changes that will come in the relationship. And once you see that, then, and that person is not willing to, or you're not willing to, invest in the relationship in that way, that's a way that you can also just know for certain whether it's okay. Yeah, it's definitely this person not emotionally available to me.